You're listening to the Live Out Loud podcast with River Wynn and Michelle Flamer.
Hello, sweet friends of the podcast. This week's episode is a little bit different because Michelle and I are traveling and we're recording separately. So this will be fun. And this week we're talking about the first half of 2024 because, y'all, we are halfway through the year, which feels absolutely nuts because it was just New Year's Eve, right? And as I've been thinking about the first half of the year passing and what feels like such a fast pace, but also in many ways it has felt like a lifetime at the same time. As I'm reflecting on that, I thought it'd be really interesting just to kind of reflect on here for you guys what the first part of the year brought for us. So we're going to share with you what came through for us in the first half of the year, and just do a little recap. So for me, one of the biggest pieces that has come from the first part of this year is that slowing down, like literally slowing down in my life, is not only okay, but it's a necessity for my mental, emotional, and physical being. In a world that pushes hustle and busyness, especially as women, we are so conditioned to just do all the time. And it can feel really counterintuitive to slow down in a world that promotes so much hustle. But when we take the time to clear things off of our plate that we don't necessarily need to do, and we slow down, we get intentional about taking time to rest, taking time to create, taking time to be intentional with our friends and family, and to, first and foremost, actually just really fill our own cups. It's incredible how your body, mind, and spirit responds to that slowing down. And I actually have found, sort of ironically, that the more I slow down, the more abundant my life has become. And whether that's because clearing space makes room for newness and new experiences or receiving to come through, or whether it's just the simple act of slowing down, allowing me to be more intentional about my experiences and what I'm intaking, regardless, it has created such a beautiful spaciousness in my life to enjoy what I have and more abundance. So really, it's been a wonderful experience intentionally slowing down. And I encourage you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed out, to sit down and make a list of everything you have going on in your life right now. And just take a really hard look at, is there anything on that list that, like, does it really have to be done? Is it really something that you have to do? And is there anything on your list that you're doing because other people have told you you should be doing them, but you don't really want to be doing them? If it's something that you can afford to cut out, cut it out. Spend the next half of the year removing things from your plate, and I'd be curious to see what happens for you. And if you do that, let us know. The second thing that has been a big lesson for me in the first half of the year is nervous system regulation. As someone who is a trauma survivor, like deep childhood trauma survivor, who's done a lot of therapy, I have not heard, in my personal experience, I have not heard a lot of people talking about nervous system regulation until this last 6 months, when I really deep dived it for myself and took a hard look at how my physical being, my body, my nervous system was responding to my life through the lens of my trauma and dysregulation and being in a constant state of fight or flight mode, because my system has only known chaos for so much of my life that it became normal for me to exist in that state. And the minute, ironically, that I started to slow down, my nervous system was like, what the hell are you trying to do? What are you doing? And freaked out. And it brought me to this moment of recognition that in order to have peace in my life, I needed to get my nervous system regulated. And what did that mean? That meant doing a different form of therapy. I started doing internal family systems therapy very late last year, kind of beginning the new year as well. And that has been deeply impactful for my system because I'm going in and I'm doing deep internal work with my therapist. That is essentially nervous system regulation and neural pathway reworking. And it's been so impactful for me. Double whammy of slowing down and then regulating my nervous system has brought me to a place of just really deep peace in my life that I never knew existed. Like I said, I've been living fight or flight trauma responses since I was a very young child, and this is actually a very new chapter for me, having this much peace in my life. So, if you're someone who's had any sort of trauma, or you're someone who is busy all the time, I would encourage you to maybe reflect on, is that a nervous system response? How's your internal world doing? Are you busy because you're in an activated state? Or are you busy because you're letting yourself be shit on by the world? Where's it coming from? Where's the busyness coming from? Check into your nervous system. Does it need regulated? That's a good starting point. Third, a really big one for me the past 6 months since the start of the year has been leaning into my human design. And for those of you who maybe are not familiar with human design, we have talked about it in several episodes that we'll have to link in the show notes, but you can also go online and check out human design and find out what your type is. There are 5 types on the human design chart, and it's essentially a blueprint, similar in some ways to astrology, based on your date of birth, time of birth, location, that essentially gives you a blueprint of who you are as a human being and your potential life path and different areas that may resonate for you and be useful for you to know as you're moving through life. And I won't go over that in depth because that's another episode. But my human design type is I am a manifester, which is a small percent of the human population. And manifestors, we are initiators. We're here to create change and pave the way forward and do things in no way that anyone has ever done before. And we're here to be our most authentic selves, most raw, authentic selves. And when I started leaning into that, I've known about it for a while and I've kind of taken bits and pieces, but in the last 6 months, I've really deeply leaned into that. Which also kind of lines up with the slowing down and the nervous system regulation, because manifestors need a lot of rest. We need a lot of rest because then we have these big creative inspirational moments that come through, or we get these downloads and we are bringing change to the world and we're bringing change to our lives and we're moving forward and we're making impacts and we're sharing ourselves in ways that other people need to see in order to receive initiation on their own paths. And that requires a lot of energy. And so manifestors, we have an energy type where we sort of have these high highs and then these low lows. We need a lot of rest, a lot of integration, a lot of self-nurturing. And the more that I have leaned into that, it has brought me into a space of feeling like my most vibrant, magnetic, authentic self at a core. And I have started to approach my business as a photographer and my life on a daily basis through that lens of allowing deep rest. And what does that look like sometimes? It looks like me being fully okay with not socializing all the time. It means me being fully okay with turning my phone off and going out in the woods for a day by myself and just laying in the grass and reading a book, just filling my cup, nurturing myself. And then also being okay with the fact that there's times when my energy is so full that I can barely contain it. And downloads are happening and creative sparks are happening, and it's just bam, 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 all this high energy. And I have to trust that and follow it, because that is where the magic happens. So leaning into my human design type in the last 6 months has been deeply impactful for me. Next, one of the kind of trickier ones I've learned in the last 6 months, and most recently, I would say probably in the last month, it's really been coming up for me, is that protecting your peace can also become a form of hiding and blockage. And that might sound really strange to say, but let me explain a little bit. When you are someone like me who has gone through intense trauma and had chaos their entire life, chaos in relationship, that could be romantic relationship, family relationships, friend relationships, work relationships, just all forms of relationship. When you've had intense chaos most of your life and you've lived in fight or flight mode, when you do nervous system regulation and you do intense healing work and therapy, and you constantly move forward and heal and grow, you get to a place where the newness of feeling at peace is so beautiful that you want to do everything you can to protect it, which we all need to protect our peace. I think that's very important, that we are looking at the things we do in our life in such a way that we are protecting our peace. But I also discovered that, especially in the last month, that when it comes to relationships, and dating specifically, I will say, this is what's coming up for me, is that I am so fiercely jealous of my own peace that I will protect it at all costs. And I have this deep seated belief that dating equals chaos, because that's been my experience, that dating and relationship equates chaos. And I do not want chaos in my life. So I've had this sort of self-defeating cycle going on where I love my new chapter of peace so much that I've used it to kind of hide a little bit from being vulnerable, from being open to dating, or not even just dating, but socializing in many ways. I kind of stepped out of socializing in a very big way, because even socializing sometimes can be a challenge, because I want to protect my peace. I don't want to listen to people gossip or share their deep emotions sometimes, because it can feel overwhelming. It feels like chaos, because it's not mine to carry. And I have let that turn me into a bit of a hermit. So here I am, cherishing my peace, but also not connecting with others in ways that I also truly appreciate and love. So in the last 6 months, it's been the chapter of peace. But now going forward into the next 6 months, the challenge now is going to be, how can I protect my peace while also balancing it with having human connection in meaningful ways that are also important to me, without giving into the fear that being vulnerable, being open is going to invite in chaos. And part of that is trusting myself, reassuring little inner me that I'm going to be able to recognize true chaos and the true quote unquote red flags of things that might be harmful or not feel good. And I'm going to protect my boundaries in those moments and use my tools and not self-abandon. And that in itself is a huge game changer for me, and I'm not used to. So in the next 6 months, we will see how that comes out in practice, but I'm looking forward to it. Another, the last one is a big one that I think some of you are going to resonate with, because as I've been sharing it in my personal life with people I love, I'm getting a lot of heads nodding and that cuts deep. So I am a recovering people pleaser in a very deep way. And I have historically people pleased in every single facet of my life, from quote unquote, relationships, from work, from being paid to where I live, or all the areas. And I'm not just speaking now in this chapter of my life, like all throughout my life. And I came to a space recently in therapy where I recognized that the root of my people pleasing came from a part inside of me that was a very young part, about 2 years old, toddler part, where I learned in my parental relationships and my environment that if I made other people unhappy by being myself, or speaking up for my needs, or asking for my needs to be met, basically being a human toddler, that if they were unhappy with me for any reason, it meant loss of connection, it meant loss of affection, and it meant loss of validation, security. So all the things that you need for secure attachment, of being validated in that who you are is wonderful and amazing, and that no matter who you are worthy of love and to be seen and to receive connection. So my entire life I've people pleased because this little inner part of me, this little toddler piece of me, didn't get that secure assurance as a child. And so now as an adult, it's been my job to go in and reparent that part of myself and teach myself, my internal world, that at 36 years old now, I've got me. And even if other people are upset with me because of who I am and being my authentic self, if that means I lose connection with people and they're unhappy, that doesn't have anything to do with my self-worth. It's just information. It's information that tells me a lot actually about the people in my life, because if I am showing up authentically as my true self and just being me and stating my needs and having boundaries and valuing my self-worth and valuing my time, especially in terms of creativity and work, if I am showing up in that way and the people around me are displeased, that's a them problem. And maybe those aren't the right people in my life. Because if they can't see me, truly see me as I'm showing up as myself, that's a lot of information. The wonderful piece is that I am surrounded by wonderful humans who not only see me deeply, but when I state my needs or I state my boundaries, they cheer for me. And I'm going to give an example of this. I very recently and unexpectedly manifested in a job offer that I accepted. And I am starting a new job in September. A very deeply aligned job that I'm very excited about. But it meant having to give notice to the families I nanny for that I was going to be ending childcare for them and moving into this new position. And that little inner part of me, that little toddler inside of me, started having a giant meltdown about telling them. Because one of the set of parents are people I've known for a very long time. They've been clients of mine. We've interacted in many capacities, and I adore them. And that little part of me was really afraid that by disappointing them and ending my childcare services to them, that I was going to lose connection and that they weren't going to like me and that they were going to be mad at me. And I had to, for a full day, sit with that little part of myself and just really give it love and reassurance and acknowledgement. I hear you. I hear your fear. And I just want to validate that, like, what you experienced when you were a toddler was so valid because the adults in your life weren't giving you what you needed. But I'm here now. Self is here. I'm 36 years old and I've got us. We're okay. Other people get to feel how they feel. And if me ending childcare makes them frustrated, that's understandable. It's hard to find new childcare, especially if you only have a month notice. That's understandable. They get to feel how they feel, and that's not a reflection on who I am or my value, my inherent worth. They get to feel how they feel. And once my little inner child heard that, a little toddler, heard that reassurance and acknowledged that 36-year-old self is in charge and loud and proud about it, it was able to calm down and make space for the sharing of the information. And as soon as I shared the information, they cheered for me because they're awesome people and they were excited for me. Yeah, they were sad. They're like, we're going to miss you. And yes, we need, to find new childcare, which of course is frustrating, but they were cheering for me as well. And so with this example, I just want to really hit home that, when you show up as your authentic self, the people in your life who see you are going to always cheer for you. And that's something that little me never got to experience. So the last 6 months, I've done a lot of reparenting work around my self-worth and teaching myself that we don't have to people please anymore. We don't have to do that because I've got me. I've got me, and I know my value and my worth. So my friends, this has been an incredible 6 months for me, truly. And like I said at the beginning, it has gone by so fast, but it's also been so deep at the same time. It feels like so much has happened in the last 6 months, and I'm excited to see what comes through in the next 6 months of 2024. I have some intuition around it. I have some intuitive downloads around what is coming through, and there's a new chapter starting. I'm quite literally in July have closed a chapter, and there's a new one opening, and I can't wait to share with you at the end of the year, because I know we're probably going to do a download episode of the whole year in reflection. So I look forward to sharing that with you. And I just want to encourage you all, because this is July and August is coming and we're halfway through the year, to sit down and take stock of the last 6 months, what's come through for you, and just really give it gratitude and give it appreciation and acknowledgement, and give yourself a giant freaking hug. Because I'm sorry, but being a human in 2024 is a little chaotic and messy right now on a global scale. So give yourself a hug, be gentle with the people around you, have appreciation for the ways that you're growing and you're changing, and set some intentions for the rest of the year. Where do you want to see yourself in 6 months? Doesn't have to be huge goals, just little things as you're reflecting on the first 6 months of the year. Sending you all so much love. Hope you have an amazing week.
Hello. I love everything that River just said. And yes, we're doing this different solo cast together on these first 6 months. So thank you for joining us for this. It's a little different for us, but we made the pact a year ago to always be consistent with the podcast and put out episodes that we're not only proud of, but to be consistent every week and not miss a week. So I appreciate you listeners, sticking with us. And I love how we've gained some new listeners. I was in Atlanta last week, and I met a few new people, wonderful new friends, and they were so sweet because they were already following the podcast, and she didn't know that was me. So it was really cool where we were having this moment of, wait, you're one of the hosts of Live Out Loud? I was like, yeah, I am. And then she showed me her Instagram, and she was already following us. So I think that is just so cool. So shout out to Molly out in Atlanta. So anyways, really appreciate having this opportunity to really dig in a little bit to my first half of the year, which shit, New Year's Eve came and went. And I realized, after it was kind of coming on to my 2 years of asking for the divorce and realizing that, it was time to start sort of tippy-toeing back into the dating scene. And it's so interesting when you realize that dating has changed a lot since the last time I was single, which, let me tell you, I've had two very significant relationships. And so I was 25 when I last was actually single. So a lot of interesting stuff has happened. I wouldn't say it was all great, but, I think this year with my word of 2024, which was receive, and getting better at just receiving, whatever that is, receiving constructive criticism, receiving goodness, receiving love, receiving friendship, whatever you want it to say. So it's one of these things where, jobs, and I was just really thinking about last night when I was walking out, and I'm here in Las Vegas now with my new job, with my new company, who I feel so grateful for, and I already love what I'm doing. But I was walking out of the World Market Center here in Vegas and thinking that thought about how our identity is tied to our careers, self-worth. And it's just so fascinating how we become our career, where really our career is just a part of who we are. But so often, because we spend so many hours in these jobs, whatever you want to say, careers, whether you're a therapist or, a teacher, doesn't matter. I mean, sure, teachers get a summer off, but they work so hard throughout the year. They deserve that summer off. But our identity is just often tied to these jobs due to cultural norms, because that value around the professional success, right? And our social status and the significant time, like I just said, like we invest in this work. I'm aware that jobs provide our sense of purpose and fulfillment, especially when they align with our skills and passions. I mean, River's just getting back to her photography, and I know that's a passion for her. I have friends who are therapists and, just helping people. And, my mantra forever was just helping companies grow. So I think when you can connect your job to that purpose and passion, it really becomes more soul work. But that economic strain of, employment and how central, especially here in America. If you talk to other countries, the Norwegian countries, some countries in Europe, they put the emphasis on living a well-lived, curated life. Here in America was built on the shoulders of humanity, of the shoulders of the Native Americans, on the shoulders of blacks, and slavery back in the day. America has not stopped to smell the roses one bit. And with the political strain these days, I'm feeling this every day now, and especially starting into 2024, being that it's an election year. And so these, we have achievements in our career, which can definitely contribute to sense of our identity and pride. But it's like, it's that society's validation and what we believe is important and how we want to be remembered, and that and our identity just encompasses so many facets of that beyond just our job. So, while a career can greatly influence your sense of worth, it's like, what does that mean for you? For me, making a good living, and I have for so many years, is really just about choices. I think my mom taught me that. It's like, just giving yourself the opportunity for choices. So, obviously we have to pay our bills. We have to pay the IRS. It's that whole thing of like, there are two things in the world we can absolutely count on: death and taxes. Like, that's horrible. But, it's the truth. So I think it's important to recognize that, even though career is fantastic and can greatly increase our value, we need to know that, the other things like building relationships, whether it's personal relationships, I'm just going to encompass with family and friends, and, if you're dating your significant other, your spouse, your kids especially, having values, having hobbies, having these intrinsic qualities, and balancing that career with these other aspects of your life, it can just lead to a more holistic and stable sense of self-worth. And I think that's really important. I lost my job, e-commerce and reorgs and all sorts of fun stuff, but I realized I just wasn't happy in that last job. And it's the first time in my whole career where I wasn't like fulfilled internally. And it was such an odd feeling because I really pride myself on adding value. And when I don't add value, oh gosh, I feel guilty for like taking a paycheck. And it's really a struggle for me at that point, so the value around what you do, at least for me, being a generator in the human design. I know River talked a little bit about human design. Please, if this is the first time you're hearing about human design, it really uses astrology and the Kabbalah and all sorts of really cool things to sort of create this makeup of 5 different styles and traits. And you have like generator, which is me, manifester, which is Miss River, a projector, which is I've talked about before, which is my child, Caden. You have reflector, which is like the most uncommon. And then you have manifestor generators, which are a few of my friends and pretty popular. But it is, it's interesting utilizing these other tools to feel and kind of create this well-roundedness, gut instinct for myself and have that validation through multiple channels. So, between job and our love lives, I mean, that's, and living in a life of love, like those are the two things I think that most humans struggle with. And a lot of times they don't even align or match up. It's like your career is rocking, but you don't have a love life. Or your love life is rocking and your career's gone to shit. So I don't know if there's coincidences to some of that. I don't know if you're laughing and, giggling with me, but doesn't that feel like Murphy's Law a little bit? So around like dating, God, like I just said, like dating in 2024 for me is like a multifaceted experience, It's like first you have online dating, and I hate it. Dating apps, websites, even though I am dating somebody now, and I did meet them via Facebook dating, it wasn't quite what you imagine. It was this really fluke moment, but I am no longer since on there. But it is quite interesting, but we had a mutual friend. I like to lean into that. Like there was a mutual friend connection, and so I was able to like reach out to that friend first, and so I kind of took a roundabout approach to it. But and then you have like hybrid datings where people are combining online dating with meeting through friends or work and social events, and then you have, which I really appreciate, and I think what River and I have spoken about a few times on the podcast, is around intentional dating. There's just this growing emphasis, right, on having clear communication and shared values and, in this early dating process. And I've been listening a lot to Jillian Turecki and her podcast around attachments and love and really like gently breaking down some of the misnomers of dating. And not only that, like if you're dating somebody who you never would have thought you would have ever been with, and those things around there. So I think just being intentional and really getting to know people is obviously so important. But there's all kinds of styles of dating, and from casual to serious. There's like all these other, embracing diverse or like fluidity, with poly and with terms like ethically non-monogamous, which I don't subscribe to, but it's just so fascinating, this new vocabulary around dating. And it's just become so much more inclusive and diverse with all those things, that fluidity that I was talking about, with like this greater acceptance of different backgrounds, identities, and orientations, and to each his own, right? It's like just meeting a good person and utilizing your non-negotiable or requirements list kind of goes out the window sometimes, because what you really need to do is just check in with your gut. So it's been very interesting, because I think with dating comes mental health and superficiality, and then you have like dating burnout. I have a few friends who are just like, I am fucking done. They are just done. The constant swiping, the messaging, going on dates, it can just lead to like this disillusionment and like fatigue. They call it literally dating fatigue. And it's just so fascinating to me. It's like, I was listening on the way here because of that airplane debacle, there was no way I wanted to get on a plane this week. And so luckily Phoenix and Vegas are only about 4 hours apart. So I enjoyed and was reminded about Leo Buscaglia, Dr. Love, as a lot of people call him. And I used to read his books when I was like 12 and 13. And he has, specific book around love or living, loving, and learning. His lectures and talks were also incredibly popular, but all these years later, I found this fantastic lecture from him, but he's in front of a studio, in front of an audience. So I don't know if he's just on a stage somewhere, but he is so funny. And so I found him on Spotify. So you can totally download. I'll even link the Spotify to the show notes, because I just enjoyed him so much, and I was laughing in the car, meanwhile getting the gist of what he was throwing down. But the dude is so smart and so funny, and he's so popular, and and the cool thing is, he was a professor at USC, where he actually taught courses on love and interpersonal relationships. Like, where were these classes? I mean, I wish I would have had more of inspired understanding when I was going through college, and I really wish I would have focused in on that a lot sooner in life. And if you have like kids in your 20s, I highly suggest, getting them one of his books, or getting them some type of book to start creating that emotional intelligence around love and relationships. because having that understanding on a deep level is really important, because people come to us with so many different life happenings, and not everything prepares you for what you're about to encounter, because none of us are perfectly healed. And it's really important to remember that giving grace to somebody who is on the journey to self-discovery, on the journey to making themselves better. And I know River talked a little bit about IFS, internal family systems, and the book that I read for that was There Are No Bad Parts by Dr. Schwartz, who created IFS. And really, it's such a beautiful place to start. Talk therapy is great for a little while, but if you really want to heal those parts of you, it's about digging into, your internal manager, your internal child, and all the different, parts that create who you as a full whole individual are. So yes, you come to a relationship whole because you're standing, or you're in front of somebody as a human, but it's not necessarily that you are fully healed. And God, I don't ever want to be fully healed, because I never want to stop learning, right? So what else with this first 6 months of life here in 2024? I think I've learned some really valuable lessons, and I've asked myself now that when I'm going through something, to literally ask myself, what's the lesson? That's what I journal. What's the lesson in this? And I think being open and curious every day, and if there's a little ripple, if there's a bump in the road, even if there's a joyous day, what's the lesson in this today? Is it about leaning into that joy? Is it about saying yes, please to it, so that we can vibrate and be in that higher energy vortex, much like Abraham, Hicks says, is more of this, please. Would you say more of this, please, if you're really going through the muck? You're like, none of this fucking please, And it's just that energy that we put out there, and that vibration and frequency that we really can lean into when it just feels so good, so aligned. And that can be job, that can be family, that could just be a peaceful day. And what's interesting is recently I've started to have those days where I was like I was back in my 20s, except let me tell you, I know we were just talking about career. It's really nice to have this freedom, but it's definitely better on a larger bank account, and more opportunities and choices to be in those days of living in that freedom. Because the other day I was, getting my to-do list together for this week, knowing that I have 2 trips back to back, and one is with my, 12-year-old to go see family. So I got my list together and I packed her early. So she's all packed and ready to go, so that when I come back from a trade show this week, that she's done. And all I have to do is really focus on my laundry and getting it done. So it's really looking ahead and taking things that you need to be responsible for off your plate as soon as you can, and creating a list of what needs to get done. And then looking, taking a step away and coming back and looking at that list and seeing really what those priority pieces are. And this is just a time management thing, but, the emotional aspect around that, and this Saturday that I got to enjoy, was really what do I want to do today? I got the things done on my to-do list, and then the rest of the day was really free and open. And so, I have the dog, and Cooper and I went for a beautiful walk. I got a pedicure, and then I thought, I'm going to go get a trim, because I'm not going to have any time between now and going to Chicago and all the things. So, and then it was just like, what else do I want to do? And so I'm cruising around on my Vespa, and it really felt like I was back in, the San Fernando Valley or LA or West Hollywood, whatever you want to, wherever you live, East Coast, doesn't matter. But I was back in my Jeep and just cruising through the day and not a care in the world. And it was such a beautiful space to arrive in. And I found myself saying, more of this, please. Just this calm, happy, fun-loving day that ended with sound healing therapy, with two of my dear friends, and then a Mediterranean dinner at a cool little family-owned joint that has amazing Greek food and a really cool grocery store attached to it. And so it just ended up being a beautiful day. So I'm really hopeful with the next 6 months ahead and ending the year financially stronger, so I have more choices to make in 2025. Maybe dating somebody, and like making it, continue and official and, all those things. Just staying in that hopeful pocket that things continue to go well, right? And end the year doing something really fun, taking a cool trip, adding to the bucket list. And also just seeing my kid have like an end to a great year as well. And, I just want to wish everyone a happy August coming this week. And, just really be mindful and create, like River was saying, like really think about what yet you want to get done, accomplished. Set some goals for yourself that are attainable so you can feel good when you cross that shit off your list. And don't forget, lean into a friend. Lean into one friend that you haven't leaned into for a while and really let people know if you love them and, make sure you say it out loud. So I'm going to say more of this. Yes, please to this. And we really appreciate you guys listening. Have a really tremendous day.
If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to subscribe and share because what do we say, baby?
Sharing is caring.